how to build trust and how to rebuild trust when trust has been lost. I don't know about you, but when trust has been lost between me and another person, I find it hard to have an open communicative relationship at all. If there isn't trust there, you don't really know what to do or say. You don't know where it is safe for you to go emotionally in that relationship. And so you've got to clear the air and then work on rebuilding trust. And the thing about it is, trust is built differently for different people. So there's no one size fits all how to rebuild trust when it's been broken in a relationship plan, but there are several different things and tactics that you can do that do cover all of the different ways that most people determine whether they will or will not trust someone. So today we are going to talk about 7 steps to build trust, either initially in a relationship or after trust has been lost. If that's what you're here for, it's coming up. First, will you check and see if you're a subscriber here? And if not, why not? Go ahead and become one today by clicking that subscribe button. If you click the bell button next to it, it'll give you notifications when you come onto YouTube that there's a new video here from GILD waiting for you. And while you're at it, while you're clicking around, go ahead and give me a thumbs up. So I know that you like this topic, you're here with me, and I will see you again in just a moment.
GILD Coaching. More success, less stress.
How to build and rebuild trust. Today, you are going to get 7 steps to build trust. So these 7 steps work for new relationships when you're just starting to know someone. They also work in a different way to rebuild trust when trust has been damaged or lost in an existing relationship. And the reason that I say that they're in a different way is that you don't have all of that new learning. You already know the person. So they shift and the communication shifts. It's slightly different. We're going to talk about both. All right. The first thing that you need to know is that explanations will always sound like excuses. So if you're the person who's done something to lose trust, then you explaining, oh, well, this is what I was thinking. Oh, well, here's why I did that. It's just going to sound like an excuse. Even if you don't think it's an excuse, doesn't really matter what you think. It matters what the person is who has been harmed or damaged or wrong in this. Their perception is the one that matters when it's important to you that you rebuild their trust in you. So rule number 1, no explanations, because explanations just sound like excuses and excuses just damage the trust more. If you're taking notes, write that down. If you're not taking notes, get something and start taking notes. And if you don't have something to write with, you can use the comment section here. It helps to solidify your learning when you take notes. All right, so your first note is never explain or make excuses. It just makes matters worse. I'm going to give you an example. Very recent, because I teach this stuff, but I'm still human and I screw up too. So recently I had kind of a negative interaction with someone who I've known for a long, long time. I haven't known him well in the last 20 years, but we went to high school together. And he was supposed to do some work at my house, and I found out after the fact that he's kind of known for cheating people. And he cheated me out of some money and didn't do the work, and it was, a big deal. And I let some of our mutual associations know, just in case they, like me, weren't aware that this person was going around contracting work, taking the money for it, and then not completing it. And in that exchange, I said something about this person's child. 20-year-old child, so, not a little bitty kid, but 20-year-old child who has been in some trouble with the law. And I said, it makes sense now because I'm seeing like his kids are kind of following in his footsteps. And one of my friends said, whoa, that's wrong. You shouldn't bring the kid into it. And I thought, you know what? Yeah, that 20-year-old young man who did just recently get arrested for something, he really doesn't have anything to do with this situation, and that's right. I can see how I made the connection, like, oh, it makes sense now. He's been involved in criminal activity and he's getting sued by all these people and has been arrested so many times, and now his sons are doing the same thing. But I made that connection mentally. but there was really no excuse to actually say it. And one of my friends called me on it. She said, that's over the line. And instead of saying, oh, well, here's my reason, here's my explanation for, I just thought, is she right or is she wrong? She's right. It's not completely irrelevant, but it's mostly irrelevant. And so instead I just said, you know what? Her name was Mindy, my friend who called me on it. I said, you know what, Mindy, I apologize. You're absolutely right. That was over the line. And whatever my reasons are for making that connection, it just didn't need to be said. Thank you for your correction. And that was it. Now, had I made excuses, well, this and this and this, it would have just grown the negativity around it. And then I would have been even more in the wrong than I was when it first happened. So there's an example of how excuses could make things worse and what you should do instead. All right, so we know that explanations and excuses make everything worse, but what you don't know yet is the 7 steps to build trust. So get your pen and pencil or get your thumbs ready to start typing in if you're taking notes here in the comments. First is to listen. Listen. Number 1, listen. Listen to the other person. And let me just show you what listening sounds like. Listening sounds like you not talking. If you're talking, if you're saying if you're thinking about what you're going to do next, what you're going to say next, if you are in some way making any noises to communicate how well you're listening, then you're not actually listening. Listen. Open these 2 things. If you have 2 working ones, if you only have 1 working one, open that one and listen. Listen to the other person's perspective. I'm not saying that you have to agree with it. I'm just saying listen. Listen to the other person's anger, their hurt feelings. If it doesn't make sense to you, you can ask questions and use curiosity, but use it from a neutral standpoint. You don't want to ask questions that start with the word I. You don't want to start sentences with the word you. Those are very offensive. That means that you're like headed into battle. Yeah, well, you, blah, 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 blah. No. And regardless of whether you agree with the person's feelings or whatever they're saying, you can still empathize, and that's number 2, empathize with them. When my friend Mindy came back and corrected me, she has a son who is the same age as the young man I was talking about. There's a personal connection there just with a young man that's that same age. And all of us make mistakes. We make mistakes when we're little bitty kids. We make mistakes in our 20s. We make mistakes the whole time. It's human condition. So this one particular person was probably thinking something along the lines of, man, how would I feel if my son screwed up and something that I did brought him back up into the conversation? That wouldn't be fair. Okay, so before I answered, I thought, how can I empathize here? Oh, she has a son that's that age, who's that age. I get it. So I listened, I empathized. Then the third step isn't something that I had to do in the example that I've given you today, but communicate to learn how to prevent a recurrence of this. If you have a friend who violated your trust and they shared a secret with other people that they had promised you that they wouldn't, and it gets back to you in whatever form that it returns to you. You can discuss with this person, how can we prevent this from happening? Maybe the prevention is you change your boundaries, you tighten your boundaries. Maybe the prevention is enough for that person just to understand how much this hurt you, and you have a close enough relationship that you can heal it just through that conversation and that understanding. So number 1, listen. Number 2, empathize. Number 3, discuss and communicate how to prevent a recurrence. If you can show that you're really, whether you're the person who's wronged, or whether you are the person who did the wronging of someone else, showing that you're interested in prevention moving forward helps to communicate that you really do want this to heal, that you're in this together, and that alone is a trust building activity. But number 4 is to show in actions, be consistent in actions that back up the trust that you're trying to build. If you're trying to build trust in a new relationship, you're going to not do that last example. You're going to not share things with other people about this person or that this person has told you about, because you are showing them that when something is shared with you, it ends there unless it was meant to be continued and shared on again. When something's shared with you, it ends there, and you can hold that. So if you have consistent actions like this that can show trustworthiness, then do those. Don't do it in a way that, like, you're doing the work and you're like, hey, look, I'm trustworthy. I'm doing this work over here. Just do it as a way of life. And through living in that trustworthy action way, you will be noticed for your actions. You've heard that saying, actions speak louder than words, and they do, and they do, and they do. So listen, empathize, prevent future occurrences, show trust through your actions. And number 5, if you're taking notes, take responsibility. Take full responsibility for your actions. What happened with me and my friend Mindy when she corrected me? I empathized. I thought, what can I do to prevent this? Just knowing that needed correction was enough for me to prevent. I showed trust action by immediately taking responsibility. You know what? You're right. That's on me. It was wrong. I apologize. I owned it. The big problem with rebuilding trust when somebody screws up, whether it's a small screw up like I did or a bigger screw up, the big problem with rebuilding trust is that the person who lost the trust doesn't take responsibility for having lost the trust in the beginning. So if you can take that responsibility without blame, without explanation, that's big. And unfortunately, in today's society, that's pretty rare. Most people aren't stepping up and doing that. Number 6, I've already gone over this because it's part of what I did, but number 6 is apologize. Just apologize, but from a place of sincerity. I'm sorry. I don't like forced apologies. You tell him that you're sorry. No. Apologize. Hey, you know what? You're right. I shouldn't have done that. I'm so sorry. Will you forgive me? It doesn't feel good when you're not used to apologizing, but I'm pretty used to it. When I screw up, I usually recognize it pretty quickly, and if I don't recognize it pretty quickly, somebody points it out to me, and I'm like, oh my gosh, let's just get this done. Apologize. It's very humbling. It's very powerful. And also, you've got to remember that you have to have open and honest communication. And this is not done over text and email. You need to use your voice. You need to have eye contact. You need to make sure that you're opening that energy exchange between you and the other person, because otherwise they don't get to feel your vibe. They don't get to feel the connection, the desire that you have to have that bond with them. And without that, without being able to detect and feel those things, then it's very, very difficult to build trust. When couples are having problems and they say, we're just going to do a trial separation, I know that 9 times out of 10, a divorce is coming. Because if you're doing a trial separation, you're actually saying, let's see what it feels like to live without each other. And when you have some negative energy going on in that relationship and you remove yourself from it, of course it's going to feel better. Oh, this is so much better. I don't know anyone who's ever done a trial separation who it was their idea or they wanted it, that they weren't like, oh, this is awesome. Well, the thing is, they're tying themselves up. They're binding themselves to loving that feeling of freedom, and they're fooling themselves by thinking that that's the only place where they can get that feeling of freedom. Meanwhile, they're throwing away any investment that they had in this relationship to begin with. When you don't exist together, you can't give each other the chance to share that energy, to be able to witness those consistent trust-building actions. Now I'm talking more about rebuilding trust than just building trust to begin with, but let's say that there's a huge problem like infidelity, something like that in a relationship. That is a huge problem. And if something huge like that exists, I really encourage you, find a relationship coach, find a good therapist, don't just go to Google and say relationship therapist near me. Like, get some references, get some recommendations, and get a good therapist to help you through that, because you need someone to help you navigate that. These steps can also help with building trust, but you need someone to help you navigate that personally, and they can customize that for you. So those are our 7 steps to building trust. If this video has been of use to you, go ahead please and give me a thumbs up so I know that you liked it. And if you didn't already, click that subscribe button, click that bell so you know when we drop another video like this to help you live a more peaceful, connected, lower stress, successful life. I'll see you next time.